The heavy rain poured down on the city, cloaking the streets in blurry streaks of light from street lamps and passing cars. Emily, clad in her thin uniform, hunched beneath a small umbrella, trying to weave through the rushing crowd. Her sneakers were soaked, squelching with every step as the chill seeped into her bones, making her feel as if her whole body was freezing. Her mind was occupied with unpaid bills, an almost empty fridge, and the long shift ahead. She kept her eyes on the ground, focusing on avoiding puddles, completely unaware of the man stepping out of a sleek luxury car just ahead of her. A soft collision broke her thoughts. Emily gasped as her umbrella slipped from her grasp and landed on the wet ground. "Sorry," she exclaimed, immediately bending down to pick it up without looking up. "It's okay." "But, Emily." A deep, warm voice cut through the rain. Emily froze, looking up to meet a familiar yet distant face. The man, dressed in a finely tailored coat, with sharp features and deep eyes, looked at her with a mixture of surprise and recognition. "Ethan," she said, her eyes widening in disbelief. "It's really you." Ethan smiled. A familiar yet matured version of the boy she once knew. "It's been ages." Emily bit her lip, feeling a strange mix of emotions. Ethan, who used to climb trees with her and play tag under the summer sun, now stood before her, exuding a confident elegance that felt worlds apart from their childhood. "Yes. It's been a long time," she said softly. "You're doing well." "I see. Not as well as you'd think." Ethan replied with a shrug. "I'm just a driver for a rich boss. It's not as glamorous as it might seem." Emily glanced at the luxury car behind him, finding his words hard to believe. But she didn't press further, merely nodding. "What about you? What brings you here?" Ethan asked, his tone shifting to one of gentle curiosity. Emily hesitated, not wanting to delve into the struggles of her life. She felt the gap between them was too vast to explain. "I work nearby. At a small diner," she replied vaguely. "It's nothing fancy. But it keeps me busy." Ethan nodded, though his gaze suggested he could see through her guarded response. "Maybe I'll stop by sometime. Is the coffee any good?" Emily chuckled, a sound like a brief ray of sunshine piercing through the cold rain. "That depends on who's making it." "Then I'll take my chances," Ethan said with a warm smile. Emily glanced at her watch and realized she was running late. "I've got to go. It was really nice seeing you again, Ethan." "You too," Ethan said, watching as she hurried away. Emily was once a young woman full of hope when she entered her marriage with Stephen. A man who appeared perfect on the outside and had a charismatic personality. At first, Stephen seemed like the ideal husband, showering her with sweet words and thoughtful gestures. But just a few months after their wedding, his true colors began to show. Stephen controlled every aspect of Emily's life. He pressured her to quit her job and become a stay-at-home wife, forbidding her from contacting friends and family. Whenever Emily tried to resist, Stephen's sharp words cut her down, making her feel small and worthless. The nightmare worsened when Stephen's behavior turned physically abusive. Arguments escalated into violence. Emily often bore bruises she couldn't explain, but she didn't dare share her pain with anyone. Stephen frequently threatened that if she left, he would hurt her or those she loved. These threats left Emily in a constant state of fear, unable to speak up or seek help. Many nights, she lay in bed, tears streaming down her face, wondering how her life had spiraled into such despair. Yet deep inside, Emily held on to a faint glimmer of hope that she could escape Stephen's grip. One day, after a particularly brutal argument, Emily decided to leave Stephen. She packed a few essentials and quietly slipped out of the house under the cover of darkness. Her heart pounding with the fear of being caught. She sought refuge at a women's support center, where she received help to start a new life. However, Stephen wasn't willing to let her go so easily. He began stalking her, sending threatening messages, and showing up at her workplace or places she lived. His presence lingered like a ghost, always making Emily feel on edge. She moved frequently, but Stephen always managed to find her. Emily's life became increasingly isolated. She avoided forming close relationships, fearing that anyone who got near her might become Stephen's next target. She kept her past a closely guarded secret, refusing to open up even to new acquaintances. Though she tried to move forward, Stephen's presence remained an invisible chain holding her back. Every time her phone buzzed, Emily flinched, dreading that it might be another message from Stephen. The texts were always cold, calculated threats reminding her that he was still watching and could harm her at any moment. Despite all this, Emily refused to give up hope. She reminded herself that she had escaped once and could do it again. No matter how hard Stephen tried to control her, Emily was determined not to let him destroy her life again. Ethan began visiting the diner more frequently, always during Emily's shifts. At first, Emily was surprised to see him sitting at the same corner table, sipping coffee and smiling every time their eyes met. She couldn't help but wonder why someone like Ethan, sophisticated and polished, would spend so much time in a modest diner like this. "I'm starting to like the coffee here," Ethan said one day as Emily brought him a fresh cup. Emily smiled faintly, trying to keep her distance. "Well, you're lucky. Brenda made it today. Not me." They often exchanged small talk and reminisced about childhood memories in Crestwood. Ethan talked about climbing trees, racing bikes, and playing hide-and-seek under the old oak tree. These memories made Emily laugh, bringing a little light into her otherwise dark life. However, while Ethan tried to create a sense of comfort and familiarity, Emily kept a certain distance. She didn't want Ethan to know about her painful past, especially the escalating threats from Stephen. Ethan, on the other hand, was also hiding his own secret. Despite being the owner of a successful company, he pretended to be just a driver for a millionaire. He wanted to build their renewed connection on authenticity, not letting his wealth overshadow the bond they were rekindling. Every time Ethan came to the diner, Emily felt her heart soften. But the constant fear never left her. Her phone would buzz with threatening messages from Stephen, reminding her that he was still watching and ready to destroy any happiness she might find. One day, after Ethan left the diner, Emily received a chilling text. "If you think he can protect you, you're wrong." Emily's face turned pale, her hand trembling as she gripped the phone. She tried to hide her fear, but Ethan noticed. "Emily, are you okay?" Ethan asked, turning back as he was about to leave. "I'm fine," she replied quickly, forcing a smile. "Just a long day." Ethan wasn't convinced, but he didn't push her. He knew Emily was hiding something but decided to give her time to open up. Their relationship deepened as Ethan began to show up not just at the diner but also in the small moments of Emily's life. He brought her dinner when she worked late, occasionally inviting her for walks in the park to escape the stress of her job. Emily felt a part of her heart opening up, but there was always a barrier preventing her from fully sharing her life. Stephen's messages continued to come daily, reminding her that she couldn't escape his control. One night, after Ethan dropped her off, Emily received another message from Stephen. "Don't let him into our world. He doesn't know who you really are." Emily sank onto her couch, tears streaming down her face. She couldn't keep living like this. But she also didn't want to drag Ethan into the darkness of her life. Ethan, though unaware of the full story, sensed Emily's turmoil. Determined to protect her, he decided to dig deeper. Not just to understand her but to shield her from the threats looming over her life. That afternoon, the diner was as busy as usual, with quiet conversations blending into the clatter of dishes. Emily, wearing her familiar uniform, was serving customers with practiced composure, hiding the growing anxiety that Stephen's threatening messages had caused. The doorbell jingled loudly, catching everyone's attention. Stephen walked in, dressed in a dark coat, his calm demeanor betrayed by the cold intensity in his eyes. Emily froze in place, the tray in her hands trembling slightly. "Emily!" Stephen called out, his voice cutting through the chatter. Conversation stopped, and all eyes turned toward him. Emily tried to steady herself, but her entire body stiffened as she locked eyes with Stephen. Stephen approached her with a sly smile. "Aren't you going to say hello? Or did you think hiding here would keep me from finding you?" Ethan, seated at his usual corner table, immediately sensed something was wrong. He stood, his gaze shifting between Stephen and Emily. "Who are you?" Ethan asked, his voice calm but firm as he stepped between them. Stephen smirked, his eyes narrowing as he looked Ethan up and down. "Oh. She didn't tell you, did she? Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Stephen, her ex-husband." Gasps rippled through the diner. Emily opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. "She didn't tell you anything. Huh?" Stephen continued, his tone mocking. "She's always been good at hiding the truth. But don't worry. I'll fill you in." "Stephen. Stop it!" Emily shouted. But Stephen ignored her. "Did you know?" Stephen said, turning to Ethan. "Emily is a liar. She ran away from me but never told you why. And you, what about you? Pretending to be a driver when you're actually a millionaire? How pathetic." Emily's face turned pale, Stephen's words hitting her like a punch. Ethan stood firm, his expression dark. But he remained silent. "You think you can protect her?" Stephen sneered, stepping closer. "You don't even know who she really is." "That's enough," Ethan said, his voice icy. "I don't know what you want, but it's clear you're not welcome here." Stephen laughed harshly, but his eyes were filled with malice. "You think you can protect her? You have no idea the trouble she brings." Before anyone could react, Stephen grabbed a glass bottle from a nearby table and hurled it at Ethan. The sound of shattering glass filled the diner as the bottle struck Ethan, sending him to the floor with blood trickling from a wound on his head. Emily screamed and rushed to his side. "Stephen! Stop! Please!" she cried, tears streaming down her face. Stephen stared at them for a moment, his expression cold, before turning and walking out, leaving chaos in his wake. Ethan was rushed to the hospital, and Emily sat by his side in the waiting room, consumed by guilt. She blamed herself for dragging Ethan into her nightmare. When Ethan woke, his eyes met Emily's, filled with worry. "Are you okay?" he asked weakly. Emily broke down, grabbing his hand. I'm so sorry. This is all my fault. If I hadn't dragged you into this, you wouldn't have gotten hurt. Ethan tried to smile, though pain flickered across his face. It's not your fault, Emily. Stephen is the only one to blame. But Emily couldn't shake her guilt. As Ethan recovered, she began to distance herself from him, hoping to protect him from further harm. I think we shouldn't see each other anymore, Emily said one day, her voice trembling. Ethan looked at her, his eyes filled with pain. Do you really believe that? Emily nodded, though her heart felt like it was breaking. I don't want you to get caught up in my troubles. I don't want you to get hurt again. Ethan said nothing. But he understood her fear. He resolved to find a way to protect Emily, even if she tried to push him away. Ethan lay in his hospital bed, the soft light from the window casting a faint glow on his still weary face. The bruises and bandages on his head served as a painful reminder of what had happened. Sitting beside him, Emily's hands trembled, unsure how to start. When Ethan opened his eyes, his gaze immediately sought Emily. Are you okay? He asked, his voice weak but filled with concern. Emily felt tears welling up but tried to hold them back. I'm fine, but you shouldn't worry about me. This is all my fault. Ethan frowned, trying to sit up but wincing in pain. No, Emily. This isn't your fault. Stephen is the only one to blame. Emily took a deep breath, her eyes falling to the hands clutching a tissue in her lap. Ethan, I need to tell you something. You need to know the truth about me. About what I've been through. Ethan watched her, his eyes gentle yet focused, ready to hear whatever she had to say. Stephen isn't just my ex-husband, Emily began, her voice barely above a whisper. He's an abuser. He controlled every part of my life. I couldn't go out, couldn't work, couldn't talk to my family or friends. He made me feel small and worthless. She paused, tears streaming down her cheeks. Ethan said nothing, only reached out to hold her hand, reassuring her that he was listening. He hit me, Emily continued, her voice trembling. Many times. I thought I would never escape. But one day, I decided to leave. I snuck out at night with whatever I could carry. I thought I was free. But he found me. He's always watching. Always threatening. Ethan tightened his grip on her hand, his eyes filled with anger, not at Emily but at Stephen. Emily, you don't have to live in fear anymore. I won't let that happen. Emily looked at Ethan, doubt mixed with hope in her eyes. But you don't understand. He won't stop. He never stops. Ethan sat up straighter despite the pain and met her gaze. Then we'll do something about it. We'll find a way to protect you. You won't face him alone. Emily nodded slowly, for the first time believing she might actually escape Stephen's grasp. After a moment of silence, Ethan held Emily's hand. I need to tell you something too. I haven't been completely honest with you. Emily raised her eyebrows, looking at him with a mix of surprise and concern. I'm not a driver, Ethan admitted. I own that company. I didn't tell you because I didn't want my wealth to change how you saw me. I wanted you to know me as Ethan, not as someone defined by money. Emily felt her heart lighten a little. Ethan, I don't care how much money you have. The only thing that matters to me is who you are. And I know you're a good man. Ethan smiled, relief washing over him. Thank you. From now on, No more secrets. No more hiding. Emily nodded, feeling their bond grow even deeper. They decided it was time to confront Stephen once and for all. Ethan contacted a lawyer to help Emily file for a restraining order. They gathered all the threatening messages Stephen had sent, as well as evidence of his past abuse. "I'll protect you," Ethan said as they sat in the lawyer's office. "We'll make sure he can't hurt you anymore." Emily felt deeply grateful for Ethan's unwavering support. For the first time in years, she didn't feel alone. When the restraining order was filed, Stephen was served notice and attempted to contact Emily again. But this time, Ethan was prepared. A private security team he hired prevented Stephen from getting close to her. When the restraining order was officially enforced, Emily felt as though a huge weight had been lifted off her shoulders. She still carried fears and painful memories. But she knew that with Ethan by her side, she could begin to heal. "You're stronger than you think," Ethan said, holding her hand. Emily smiled, feeling real hope for the first time about a future free from Stephen's shadow. The days following Stephen's arrest passed like a gentle breeze, bringing Emily a sense of relief she hadn't felt in years. The security camera at the diner had captured Stephen's attack in vivid detail. And with the undeniable evidence, the police apprehended him. For the first time, Emily could breathe, knowing Stephen was no longer a threat. However, she knew her journey of healing was just beginning. Each morning, Emily reminded herself that she no longer had to live in fear. For the first time in years, she felt like she could start dreaming of a brighter future. One evening, as they sat on the porch overlooking the city lights, Ethan looked at Emily with a thoughtful expression. "Emily," he began, his voice warm and steady, "I've been thinking a lot about what you've been through, and what we can do to help others." Emily tilted her head, curiosity lighting up her face. "What do you mean?" Ethan smiled softly. "I think we should start a foundation. A place where people like you, survivors of abuse, can find support, shelter, and resources to start over." Emily sat in silence for a moment, overwhelmed by the idea. "Do you think I can do it?" "I'm not as strong as you think, Emily," Ethan said, taking her hand in his. "You're stronger than you realize. What you've been through isn't just a story of pain, it's a story of resilience. I think you can inspire so many people." Emily felt her eyes well up with tears. For the first time, she saw her experiences not as a burden but as a source of strength to help others. "Okay," she said, her voice soft but filled with determination. "Let's do it." Ethan and Emily got to work immediately. They named the foundation the New Dawn Foundation, symbolizing that everyone deserves a fresh start, no matter how dark their past may be. Ethan used his connections to raise funds and secure sponsors, while Emily worked on planning the programs. The foundation would not only provide a safe haven for victims of domestic violence but also offer counseling, job training, and legal assistance. Emily became the face of the foundation. Though she was initially nervous about speaking publicly, she soon realized that sharing her story could make a difference. At fundraising events, she recounted her journey, highlighting the importance of supporting survivors of abuse. The foundation's grand opening took place on a beautiful morning. The building was warm and inviting, with bright rooms and cozy nooks for relaxation. Emily stood before a crowd, clutching the microphone. But her voice was steadier than ever. "Not long ago," she began, "I never thought I could stand here. I lived in fear, believing no one could help me. But today, I want to send a message to everyone who feels trapped: you are not alone. We are here to help you." The crowd erupted in applause. And Emily felt a quiet pride in her heart. Among the attendees were not just donors but also women who had experienced journeys similar to hers. They came seeking hope. And Emily knew she was making a real difference. Emily and Ethan weren't just the founders of the foundation, they were a passionate team. They continued working to expand the foundation's reach, helping more and more people. One evening, as they reviewed plans for a new program, Ethan looked at Emily and smiled. "You know," he said, "we've come such a long way." Emily smiled back. "And we're just getting started." That autumn afternoon was crisp and serene, with golden sunlight streaming through the trees, creating a peaceful setting that seemed to echo their childhood memories. Emily and Ethan strolled through the park where they had grown up, their laughter mingling with the soft rustle of leaves underfoot. They stopped beneath the old oak tree, a place that had been their sanctuary, where they had shared dreams and promises as children. Ethan turned to Emily, his eyes sparkling with emotion. "Do you remember this place?" he asked, his warm voice carrying through the quiet air. Emily smiled, gazing up at the branches. "How could I forget? This was where we dared each other to climb trees and talked about our wildest dreams." Ethan chuckled softly before taking her hand. His heartbeat quickened as he pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. Dropping to one knee, he looked up at her with sincerity in his eyes. "Emily," he began, his voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm him. "We've come such a long way. Through struggles and joys. I can't imagine a future without you. Will you start this next chapter with me, not just in my life but in our life together?" Emily's breath caught, her heart pounding as tears welled up in her eyes. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Yes. I will." Ethan beamed as he slipped the ring onto her finger. "I promise to stand by you, no matter what we face." Beneath the old oak tree, bathed in the golden light of autumn, they kissed, sealing a new beginning. Their wedding was intimate yet deeply meaningful. Ethan and Emily chose to hold the ceremony at the park beneath the old oak tree, a place that held their most cherished memories. Friends, family, and supporters of the New Dawn Foundation gathered to celebrate their love. Emily walked down the aisle in a simple yet elegant white dress, her hair cascading gently around her shoulders, her face radiant with happiness. Ethan waited for her beneath the tree, his eyes never leaving hers. The ceremony began with soft music. Standing before each other, Ethan took Emily's hands, his voice trembling with emotion. "Emily," he said, "you're not just the love of my life but also the person who's taught me to face my fears and find true purpose. I promise to love and protect you, no matter what the future holds." Tears of joy streamed down Emily's face as she responded. "Ethan, you've shown me that life doesn't have to be lived in fear. You've shown me the power of love and hope. I promise to walk beside you, not just as your wife but as your lifelong partner." As they exchanged rings and vows, their first kiss as husband and wife was met with applause and cheers from everyone present. The wedding was not just a celebration of love but a symbol of healing and a new beginning. After the wedding, Ethan and Emily continued their work at the New Dawn Foundation. Together, they expanded the foundation's reach, bringing hope to survivors of abuse. Emily became a symbol of resilience and healing, not only by sharing her story but also by listening and supporting others. Ethan, with his leadership and dedication, turned the foundation into a strong, trustworthy organization. One evening, after wrapping up a successful fundraising event, they sat together on a bench outside the foundation's office. Ethan turned to Emily. His eyes filled with pride. You know. We haven't just changed our own lives, we've changed so many others too, he said. Emily smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. And I know we'll keep doing it. Together. Under the soft glow of the evening lights. They saw not only the path ahead but also the deep love and purpose they had found in each other and their shared mission. That night. The city's skyline sparkled with lights. The streets reflecting golden hues from street lamps and shop fronts. Emily and Ethan walked hand in hand. Their steps slow and deliberate as they moved through familiar streets. A gentle breeze brushed past them, carrying the cool night air. But it did little to disturb the warmth they shared. They stopped at a quiet corner where string lights from nearby shops mingled with the soft glow of overhead bulbs, creating a cozy and serene atmosphere. Emily looked up at Ethan. A gentle smile gracing her lips. We've come so far, she said. Her voice tender but filled with emotion. Ethan smiled back. His gaze steady and full of resolve. And this is just the beginning, he replied. They sat down on a nearby bench, taking a moment to reflect on the journey they had traveled together. From the early days of struggle, when both carried their own pain and secrets, to the moment they decided to face their pasts head-on. Emily thought about the time she wanted to give up, when the fear of Stephen seemed insurmountable. But with Ethan's support, she found the strength to rise, to fight, and ultimately reclaim her life. Ethan, too, remembered the moments he doubted himself, worried that his wealth might change how others perceived him. But Emily had shown him that true worth wasn't in material possessions but in how one chose to use them. Since founding the New Dawn Foundation, their lives had transformed completely. Emily became a symbol of resilience and hope for countless survivors seeking support. Every day, she met and listened to the stories of others, tales of pain but also of an unwavering desire to rebuild. Ethan, with his leadership skills and dedication, had built the foundation into a powerful organization. It not only provided help to survivors of abuse but also raised awareness about domestic violence in communities. They weren't just partners in their work, they were each other's strength. Every successful program, every survivor who found peace, deepened their love and pride in what they were building together. As they sat on the bench, Emily turned to Ethan, her eyes shining with hope. Do you think we can open more centers? There are so many people who need help. Ethan nodded, holding her hand tightly. Not only do I think we can, but I know we will. With our team and our passion, nothing is impossible. They began talking about future plans, expanding the foundation, collaborating with international organizations, and bringing more resources to those in need. I used to think my dreams were over, Emily said, her voice soft but filled with emotion. But now I realize they're just beginning. Ethan looked at her, his smile reflecting love and admiration. You're not just living a dream, Emily. You're creating dreams for so many others. They stood up, hand in hand, continuing their walk down the street. Each step felt lighter, filled with promise. The bustling city surrounded them, but within their hearts, everything was peaceful. Emily gazed up at the glowing city lights, like beacons guiding their new journey. She knew that while the road ahead might not always be easy, with Ethan by her side, she could face anything. We'll make it, she whispered, her eyes fixed on the path ahead. We will, Ethan replied, tightening his grip on her hand. In the gentle glow of the city, they moved forward, carrying love and hope, not just for themselves but for the thousands of lives they hoped to touch. Their future was illuminated not just by the city's lights but by their shared dream of a brighter tomorrow.